A lot of sci-fi this week on the TV news and reviews. We're also going to take a look at a documentary directed by an A-list celebrity about A-list celebrities from the past, and a couple of contest programs as well. Let's talk TV. Hey guys, Dan here. This is Dan Reviews It. Welcome to TV News and Reviews for the week. Like I mentioned up top, a lot of sci-fi. We're going to talk about this Netflix show, The Sandman, which is based on some Neil Gaiman stuff. We've got Paper Girls as well, and Surface, all having some Surface, maybe not quite as sci-fi as the others, but still a little bit in there for sure. And then Ethan Hawke directs a documentary series about Paul Newman and Joanne Woodward called The Last Movie Stars on HBO Max. And then a couple of new contest shows as well, Celebrity Beef and Snake in the Grass. One featuring celebrities cooking and one featuring, just regular people with a mystery element of who is the saboteur. We've seen a lot of shows like that lately. So before we get into all of that, though, of course, it is time for the news of the week. And before we even get to, usually we start with renewals and cancellations. But first, we're going to talk about some networks and some streamers and some wheelings and dealings and some business there. So the CW has been up for sale for a little while now. We've been talking about this because of all of the gutting of their programs. They, I think, axed over half of their shows for the upcoming season. And the word was that this group, Nexstar, was going to basically buy out the other two companies, or at least the majority stake of them. And that is what happened. So Nexstar, this company that owned the most CW affiliates in the country, with almost 40 of the CW. So they already sort of, had their hand in that. But they now have a 75% stake in the company, with the original owners, Warner Brothers and Paramount, splitting 25%, so 12.5% each for them. And since the merge in 2006, when the WB and UPN merged to the CW, the network has never been profitable. It has never turned a profit in all that time, which makes sense because historically its ratings are by far the worst on the major networks. But because they kept buying programs from Warner Brothers and from Paramount, and then they would sell a lot of their long-running stuff into things like Netflix and cable stations and stuff, they, really did end up turning a bit of a profit through that. But the network itself was never profitable. So we'll see what happens as this continues. Obviously, Supernatural was a huge part of that network, and they have a new show coming called The Winchesters, which is a prequel, and Jared Padalecki still has the Walker Texas Ranger show on, so there's still sort of supernatural elements in there. But we're going into the last season of Riverdale, the last season of, I think it's The Flash, so we'll see what the future of the CW is. But also, speaking of sort of Warner Brothers, they merged themselves with Discovery, and whoever owned them, I guess maybe Discovery owned itself or something. But anyway, now they're called, Warner Brothers Discovery or whatever they're doing. And so they already have done a lot of odd things under this new regime. They had a CNN Plus streamer that they got rid of within, I forget what the time frame was, but it was short, a week or something, or 5 days or whatever it was. Like, it was not on very long. And then they have put movies that have been completed, Batgirl and this new Scooby-Doo movie, on, permanent hiatus. This may never see the light of day, what have you. Well, so now comes the news that they have laid off 70 of their employees at HBO and HBO Max. They are owned by Warner Brothers. And in addition to that comes over 30 shows that are original content for either HBO Max or HBO, but was on HBO Max, that are being pulled completely. And, for me, I always thought, well, if you have original content on your streamer, that's the one thing that's never going to be pulled. Okay, The Office will rotate, and Harry Potter movies will rotate. Friends will rotate on and off these different platforms. But the original content, it would be like Netflix taking off Orange is the New Black or something. Well, why would they ever do that? So Some of these shows I don't care too much about, but it's interesting what they've chosen. So a lot of the animated and kid stuff, including an Aquaman show and this Tig and Seek that's really cute that had 4 different seasons on HBO Max already, because it did like 2 per season. And then a bunch of unscripted stuff, but very popular original shows like Generation, which, okay, I know it didn't get renewed for a second season, but it had a ton of buzz behind it. And then Mrs. Fletcher with Catherine Hahn, which was not a Max original, that was HBO original, but still, I don't understand why they're taking all this stuff off. It can't be good for business. They're already, other than I guess Netflix, which keeps hiking its prices. HBO Max is the second highest paid service. I don't get any of it. I don't understand, but I'll certainly be following it. Some of the shows I finally did finish, like that aired in 2020. I never did finish Generation, so I might have to try and catch that this week. But Run, which was a show I really liked, that I did finally finish a few months ago, so that's coming off the service. Mrs. Fletcher I did finish eventually, so I got to see that. But yeah, really, really weird stuff and a bit alarming. I mean, if I worked at Warner Brothers in whatever division, I would be sort of running for cover at this point. So I'll keep you posted on how that is progressing. All right, so now we will do the renewals. I don't have any cancellations, so it's all renewals. Love, Death, and Robots renewed for season 4 at Netflix. Every season so far has earned an Emmy nomination for short-form animated programming. It won it in 2019 and 2021 for seasons 1 and 2. The third season is up this coming year, next month actually, for the Emmys. So we'll see if it can make it 3 in a row there. I guess they didn't do a season in 2020. But that will be up for season 4 coming soon. Physical for season 3 on Apple TV Plus. That is the Rose Byrne 80s sort of dramedy kind of thing. I really enjoyed that. Again, it's not one I ended up keeping up with, but my grade was very high originally, so I would like to finish that eventually. And then Power. Oh, the stars, they love their Power shows. So Power Book 3, Raising Kanan, is renewed already for season 3 about a week before the season 2 debut, which is this current week. So that will be getting a season 3, I guess, next year. And then RuPaul's Drag Race, no surprise here. This is one of the most popular shows on television, and it certainly made more of a household name out of RuPaul, and certainly brought drag culture to the very, very mainstream. VH1 has renewed this for season 15. It didn't always air on VH1, but the last at least 5 or 6 years has been. And then the after show Untucked has also been renewed. I'm not sure how many seasons that has been on, but RuPaul sort of hosts that after party as well, or after show. So some good stuff in the renewals this week. In casting news, Jon Hamm has joined the season 3 for The Morning Show, which is kind of funny because he did this very popular commercial that even got Emmy nominated about how all these major A-list stars are on Apple TV, but not him. And he lists them off. Aniston, Witherspoon, 2 people from this show, and Sam Jackson he talked about, and the whole list. He talked about Snoopy, and then he was like, am I not good enough for Apple TV, whatever. He's become one of my favorite commercial guys too, because he's in the progressive ads where Flo pretends to not know who he is, and I think that's very funny. But I love Jon Hamm, so I'm excited about that. Talk about a show I have kept up with, The Morning Show. I even did week by week reviews in season 2 for that show. So yeah, I'm all aboard for The Morning Show, and would love to see Jon Hamm in season 3. Yellow Jackets has upped the ante a little bit for their next season. 6 Feet Under alum Lauren Ambrose, who was so young on that show, she was probably 12 or 13, and now that was so long ago, she's got to be in her early 30s now, but she has joined the cast of Yellow Jackets for season 2. She's going to play the adult version of Van, and that is the 1990s version is played by Liv Hewson. But as a result of sort of bringing Ambrose on board, and beefing up this character a little bit, Liv Hewson herself has been upgraded from sort of recurring player to a regular cast member. So that's cool for both of them. And then Jon Batiste is leaving The Late Show with Stephen Colbert as band leader after 7 years. He was really off most of the summer. Louis Cato, who has been filling in all summer, he's going to become the permanent band leader. But listen, the writing was sort of on the wall there because Batiste won Album of the Year at the Grammys this year, among many other awards. And he also shared an Oscar with Trent Reznor and Atticus Ross for doing the Soul score, the Jamie Foxx animated movie. So, look, the guy's star was clearly rising. And he wanted to kind of get out of there. So, I don't think there's any bad blood there, but he will be leaving. I guess he's already kind of left is the thing. He's like already on tour. So I think this is just sort of adding to it and saying like, look, hey, I'm not coming back. And in some announced programs, Keanu Reeves is going to star in Devil in the White City. This is based on a book by Eric Larson that I actually read. I'm not a huge reader, but I read this about, I don't even know, 10 years ago maybe, and it has been in the works a while. Leonardo DiCaprio at one point was attached to star in it, and I even read it before that, so maybe I read it 12 or 13 years ago, but it's been in the works a while. So Leo is still on board as executive producer in addition to Martin Scorsese, but it's going to be Keanu Reeves in the starring role. So I'm excited about that. I liked that story, sort of a murder mystery kind of thing. Based on a real case. The Book of Marlon is in the works at Starz after HBO Max sort of gave it a look-see and then passed on it. But this will be with Marlon Wayans. It's going to be a comedy series inspired by his life and career and have him playing sort of a fictionalized version of himself. I watched a few episodes of the Marlon sitcom that was on NBC years ago. It wasn't bad. It was okay. So that could be interesting. And going back to Apple TV for a second, they have given a series order to a show called Land of Women, which is a 6-episode dramedy starring and executive produced by Eva Longoria, based on a best-selling novel by Sandra Bernetta. And it's going to center on Longoria's character, who is a New Yorker whose life is upended when her husband implicates the family in financial improprieties. And to escape the criminals to whom her husband is indebted, she and her mother and her college-age daughter hide out in a small town in northern Spain's wine region. So that should be exciting. And something that's very interesting, and Eva Longoria is, a pro at being bilingual. They're going to film this series both in English and in Spanish. So I'm guessing everybody in the cast, unless maybe they'll swap out some of the people if they're not too fluent in Spanish. But Eva Longoria, at least for her part, and probably some of the other main cast members, they're going to film it in English and in Spanish, so you can choose which version you want to see. I think that's really cool. If that's the way we're going with things in the future, I think that's awesome. All right, quickly, we'll go to odds and ends. Kenan Thompson's going to be hosting the Emmy Awards, which is held Monday, September 12th at 8 p.m. on NBC, or live on Peacock if you have that. And I will be doing my video within the next couple of weeks, I guess, with my buddy Tim about the winners and who we think should win and will win and all the snubs for the Emmy Awards coming up. So look for that. Strange Adventures, which is an anthology series from executive producer Greg Berlanti, of course, star of all the CW, or producing star, I should say, of all the CW DC shows. So it was going to be featuring some lesser-known characters for the DC Universe, this Strange Adventures show, but it is not moving forward. It was going to be on HBO Max, and they have said, we're not even going to produce this thing. Goodbye. So another casualty of that. Filmmaker Kevin Smith, who was going to direct and co-write one of the episodes, revealed on his podcast that the show would not be moving forward, and said that it actually does make kind of sense because these are not A-list characters for the program. All right. The Continental is going to move from Peacock, or to Peacock rather, from Starz. This is the sort of prequel to John Wick, talking about the hotel that is central to those movies. Mel Gibson is one of the stars of it. And it was always going to be a series and not a movie, but this is interesting. There's only going to be 3 episodes of it. It's going to be a mini-series. I don't know if they're going to be like Stranger Things episodes, like 2 hours, but it could be just sort of a 3-hour series that we're looking at. So that's going to be moving to Peacock. And then speaking of stars, a lot of Stars news this week. They have announced that their Outlander spinoff, which portrays the the love story between Jamie Fraser's parents, is going to be called Outlander: Blood of My Blood. So I announced, I think, that show earlier, a few months ago, but now it has a name and we know a little bit what it's about. If you are familiar with Outlander, maybe you know the Jamie Fraser character. So this is going to be based on their parents, and it's called Blood of My Blood. All right, so I think we've talked about news enough. It's time to get to the reviews. Six TV shows, not movies, to talk about. And I think we're going to start with probably the most high profile, which is The Sandman. This is over on Netflix. It's doing very well in their top 10 already. And this is DC Comics related. So the original... I don't think the whole series was published by DC Comics, but the original few, at least, were published under the DC banner. It started in 1989, ended in 1996, and it is from Neil Gaiman. It is a fantasy drama superhero kind of thing, and this basically tells the story of Morpheus, who is the Sandman, and he is played here by, let's see... Tom Sturridge, who I was not super familiar with, to be honest. He's done a few things, but nothing really that I remember him in. Like, he was in some movies that I saw, but as a very, very bit player. So he is the personification of nightmares and dreams here, and the ruler of the dreaming. And essentially, he is captured in the early 1900s and was held captive for 106 years, and now he is, being let out. He escaped, actually, and sets out to restore order to the dreaming. And Boyd Holbrook here is the Corinthian, who is a nightmare who escaped the dreaming world. And Patton Oswalt here, as well as the voice of Matthew the Raven, who is Dream's emissary. So, listen, even the premise of this and talking about the characters, it is... very confusing. This is one that you want to pay close attention to. I ended up watching the first 3 episodes of this. Usually I'll give a show the old 2-episode try to be able to have a nice sort of base for it as a review. But I have to say, after the second episode, I still was like, I'm not positive I know everything that's happening here or who these people even are. The Patton Oswalt character doesn't even appear till the second episode. And what's interesting is I thought it was going to be mostly about this Sandman character, and certainly the first couple episodes are, but it becomes more of an anthology as it goes on, and he is looking at the lives of a particular people that he's going to sort of inhabit or sort of go into their lives in one way or another, and wreak havoc or whatever. And I guess from what I read, he's not even in all of the episodes, this character. So it's interesting. It's called The Sandman because he sort of is going to weave in and out of it. So I have some mixed feelings about this. So I will say I was unfamiliar. I knew the name Neil Gaiman, but I wasn't sure if I had read any of his stuff. But then he did the show Good Omens, which I really liked. That was maybe 3 years ago at this point on, I think it was Amazon Prime. And I believe that is coming back for a second season. But loved that. Really funny, sort of biting, satirical stuff. This is not that. This is definitely darker. Definitely more going on, more mysterious kind of thing. And that Good Omens was pretty much like a two-hander. This has a lot of moving parts, a lot of people involved. And the other thing is, I didn't realize that he sort of created the comic that the show Lucifer was based on. And there's a Lucifer in this too, that they had even talked about doing the same actor. But here, they've actually made Lucifer a female, which I think in the comic it does sort of veer more towards, kind of non-binary or ambiguous gender. So Gwendolyn Christie plays her, but they did talk for a little bit about, having Tom Ellis come in as Lucifer for this too, and really sort of unite those worlds. Visually, this is really stunning. Very, very cool to look at for sure. But it is heady stuff. This is not something to be sort of put it on in the background. No, this is, you got to pay attention. One thing else that I did not really like about it is I didn't think Patton Oswalt was doing a good job as the Raven, and he wasn't disguising his voice at all. It seemed like, okay, well, this is just Ratatouille, but now he's in a Raven, and that is something that I'm finding more and more with these big celebrities doing voices. If they've done voice work before, they tend to sort of go back to that well, unless they are voice artists. And we see a lot of those over the different animated series. Tress MacNeille is one, and Billy West. And, there's a bunch of names that I always see coming up. Gray Goobler, or Griffin Gray, or whatever her name is. And they're people that you see all the time. The more animated series I review, I'm like, oh yeah, I recognize that name from 8 other shows, and they're always different. You can never tell. But Patton Oswalt's just doing the Patton Oswalt thing here, and I don't think it worked. It not for me anyway. So there are definitely things that are intriguing about this. I sort of do like the anthology angle if they are going to sort of go more in that route. I didn't expect that. But I always sort of like a show, especially on a Netflix these days, where it's binging all the time. So it's easy to watch 10 episodes in a row. But I like sort of the anthology aspect of, okay, you could just, like the X-Files. I wouldn't call the X-Files an anthology series, but, there wasn't really a through line in most of those episodes, at least in the first few years. So I liked that aspect of it. And definitely, like I said, visually, really, really interesting stuff, interesting set pieces, interesting character designs. So love that. But the show itself, I definitely have mixed feelings about. So I'm going to give the Sandman a B. All right, let's move on to Paper Girls. This is probably the most sci-fi, I guess, of all of them, since Sandman's more maybe a fantasy kind of thing, I guess. But this is like time travel. This is like straight up sci-fi for sure. And it is also based on a comic book. This one a little bit newer than the Sandman, from 2015 to 2019, the comic ran. But this is on Amazon Prime, and it follows 4 young girls who are out delivering papers in the late 80s, the day after Halloween, and they become caught in a conflict of time travelers, and then it sends them on a time travel adventure as well, where some of them run into future versions of themselves. None of these girls I recognize. Cameron Jones, Riley Lenellet, Sophia Rosinski, Fina Strassa, and those are like the main 4, and then Ali Wong and Nate Cordry play 2 of the adults who, I recognize those people. Although Ali Wong, usually I think of her doing more comedic stuff. I mean, she's known for her stand-up. And she does get, a few jokes in here, but this is a pretty dramatic show overall. So I think it's interesting that she is sort of going in that direction, because she's excellent in the role. But I would say the key to this show is the 4 girls are all excellent as well. For people who, I don't really know, I thought the chemistry there was great. They all individually are very good. It reminds me a lot of like a Stranger Things, or, some of those old Steven Spielberg movies that we always talk about, E.T. and Super 8 and stuff, where they're sort of no-name actors that really, really are kind of making star turns for themselves. All these girls are great. And the premise is really interesting too. It's one of these shows, I did give away sort of the time travel thing, but that is the conceit of the show. We don't learn about that till the end of the first episode. I hate spoiling things, but it's like a lot of these shows these days, and I talk about this all the time, so I know I'm a broken record, but a lot of these shows now, the end of the first episode is when you really find out the premise of the show. And so in giving you the plot, I do sort of spoil that first episode. But most of the first episode is the girls sort of getting to know one another, because one of them is brand new to the paper route. And so that dynamic is sort of being set, and we're learning about the characters, which I think is crucial to the rest of the series. So so far I'm really, really enjoying this. I think the writing is sharp. I love a good time travel story, and I'm not sure where we're going to go from here. I only did watch the first 2 episodes. I think they're all up, though. Amazon does sort of hybrid. Sometimes it's all up at once. Sometimes we have to wait for every week. This one is up all at once. So if you are interested, you can watch the whole thing. But certainly I am interested in finding out sort of where this goes. The world building is very interesting here. And again, there's a little bit of humor injected as well. So for me, this is I don't know, maybe one of the best shows of the year so far. It's got a little Yellow Jackets vibe too, because we're doing sort of the girls in the 80s, and now we're in the present day, and what happened to them. And I mean, it's not told in flashbacks because they are the ones who are flashing forward and backwards themselves. But yeah, it's got a little bit of that sort of vibe to it with the mystery element too. So I'm going to leave Paper Girls with an A. I really, really love this show. So up next, we're going to talk about Surface. This is on Apple TV Plus, and it is really an acting stage for Gugu Mbatha-Raw. She was in the first season of The Morning Show on Apple. And I don't want to give too many spoilers for that, but let's just say she's not really in the second season. So obviously, Apple wanted to put her in something else. She is a great actress. I've been following her career for many, many years in film, and now she's getting with the TVs. But in this show, her character Sophie survives a suicide attempt, and basically the first scene of the first episode is her kind of waking up from that and wondering what the heck's going on. And she has lost all of her recent memories. I think maybe the first scene is her talking to her therapist about the incident, but the reason she decided to jump off the bridge in the first place, she doesn't know. She's trying to piece together her life and her attempted suicide and why, and through people she knows and who can she trust, and all of that sort of thing. All the normal tropes here are on display. This is unfortunate because Apple TV usually has like home run shows. Usually they're in the B range or higher. Every so often they'll dip down a little bit. I think this is even below all of that stuff, which is unfortunate because Gugu Mbatha-Raw is such a talent. She's in pretty much every scene of this show. So that's why I say like it's an acting showcase really for her, and she's great in it. But the script here is just not there. It turns quickly into a very soapy, sort of over-dramatic thing where it's not really believable in our world. And this isn't really sci-fi. Like I sort of said up front, yeah, we've got a bunch of sci-fi. This one is not really sci-fi at all. I would say it's more just sort of mystery, drama kind of thing. But the elements of mystery and the, what she's uncovering and whatever, I don't know. It's not really sci-fi, but, I had to sort of lump it in a little bit with those others. But this harkens back to the TV show Blind Spot, where the woman wakes up and is covered in all the tattoos, and that lasted way, way, way too long on NBC. So it's all stuff we've seen done before. The script is not compelling enough to give me a reason to really care about any of the characters. Now, her performance that's like, a really, really good one. Although, because of the script, I've seen her give better performances as well. But in this, she is front and center. She is the main star and the main draw for this. But for me, it just didn't all come together. I leave Surface with a C, which for an Apple TV Plus show, that is pretty low, to be completely honest. All right, let's go to HBO Max. The Last Movie Stars. Watch it while you can, because who knows when they're going to take it off of there. But it is a documentary series directed and created by Ethan Hawke. And this has such an interesting backstory, but essentially it is the life story of Paul Newman and Joanne Woodward, told through interviews, told through old movie clips. But here's the interesting part. So there were all of these interviews that were done for at Paul Newman's request for a memoir that he was going to write before he passed away. And then for whatever reason, he abandoned the whole idea. And so the audio of all of these great interviews, and maybe some of them were videoed as well, no longer exists. It's gone. But the transcripts do. So for whatever reason, the book company or whoever transcribed all of these videos. So Ethan Hawke was approached by Joanne Woodward herself and a daughter of Newman, and said, please, can you tell our story? Let us know if you can help us here with this. And so Luckily, sort of, I guess, COVID hit, and Ethan Hawke had a bunch of time on his hands. So he got together with a bunch of his famous friends, including some real big name people. You know, Sam Rockwell, George Clooney, Laura Linney, Karen Allen, Rose Byrne, Bobby Cannavale, Vincent D'Onofrio, Oscar Isaac, Zoe Kazan. A lot of people end up doing voiceovers as the famous people. George Clooney himself plays Paul Newman. Laura Linney plays Joanne Woodward. And so through these transcriptions, through these sort of Zoom meetings that he's having with them, we are able to kind of bring those transcripts to life. And even though we don't have the original stuff anymore, we have the words, and the people saying them are obviously very, very great at orating. And also interspersed is Ethan Hawke sort of talking to the people as themselves, you know, as Sam Rockwell or as Zoe Kazan or whatever, as, you know, to what their experience was with Paul Newman and Joanne Woodward. Did they ever work with them? You know, what do they feel about them? You know, whatever. And it is all incredibly interesting if you are super, super inside and want to know everything about old time Hollywood and this great couple who was married, you know, for 50 years until Paul Newman's death. You know, they went the distance. One of the sort of, you know, great marriage success stories in old Hollywood. But that's sort of my big issue with it, is that it's too inside. Like, if this were a 2-hour movie or 2.5-hour documentary movie, great. But I think this is like 6 hours long. And to me, it seems a little extreme unless you are, you know, really, really like wanting to know everything about these people. But all that aside, the way he's doing this and the way he is sort of, you know, maneuvering these transcripts and having everybody come together and watching him interact with them both, you know, in their character and out of their character, it's something that I've never seen. And in documentaries, to have something very unique, to have an angle that is very unique, that does say something. And this is certainly one of the most unique documentaries I've ever seen in my life. And the kudos really goes to Ethan Hawke for that. You know, this is kind of his project. So I'm going to dock it a little bit because I think it is way too inside. I only watched the first episode because already I was like, all right, I don't know if I want to watch 5 more of these, you know, so it may be one that I watch like once a week kind of thing or whatever. But I will leave The Last Movie Stars with an A-. I think it's brilliant in execution and sort of originality, but it definitely falls short in that area of just, I think, kind of being too long. Unless you're, you know, a huge, huge fan. All right, so finally we will do our 2 contest shows. We usually save those for the end. I don't do all of them. I certainly don't do all the reality shows, but I thought these 2 sounded pretty interesting. And Joel McHale hosts Celebrity Beef, so I had to watch that. I've been missing my Crime Scene Kitchen. I have been informed by my buddy Tim that it has been renewed for a 2nd season. The 2nd season is done and in the can. When are we going to see it on Fox? We don't know. Maybe this fall, maybe in the spring. Couldn't tell you. But in any event, I've been missing my Joel McHale and food kind of thing. So we've got now Celebrity Beef. It is where 2 celebrities go head to head, and 2 that know each other. Like the first episode is Cheryl Hines and her good friend Rachel Harris, who is a comedian in her own right. And then episode 2 was 2 of the Bachelors. Who, you know, I don't watch that show, so I didn't know who they were, but they, you know, have sort of history with each other. I think they went like one season after the other or something. But so anyway, it's all for charity, and they go head to head in a cook-off and sort of squash their beefs, proverbially, with knives in their hand. And in the first episode, they made cupcakes. The second episode, they made sausage. So it's a little different every time. And Joel McHale is at the center of it all. And as host, he sort of makes his own rules up and does his own funny things. And a couple things I really liked about this. Look, I love Joel McHale. If you don't like his sense of humor, this might be a miss for you just in general. But I think he's funny. And I think he's a good host. They canceled his Card Sharks program on ABC. Thought he was fine on that as well. But he really apparently loves being in the kitchen and doing this kind of thing. And he loves sweets, which is so funny because he is like, if you ever see him with a shirt off, like he's jacked up. But he loves his sweets. And so watching him do the cupcake episode was fun. And he has a nice rapport. I think Cheryl Hines might have been a guest on one of the Crime Scene Kitchens, so obviously they have some sort of background together as well. And one of the things I like about it the most is it's only a half hour. Some of these networks need to realize we don't need a full hour for some of these shows. Some of these game shows can be a half hour, and it's just fine. A lot of the ABC ones are fine for an hour, but like Generation Gap, that would play much better as a half hour show. So this is fun. It's fun and quick. When you take out the commercials, it's like 21 minutes or something, because it airs on E. So there are commercial breaks in there, but it's a lot of fun to watch. I like the aspect of sort of people that know each other, going head to head with things that they don't know how to make necessarily, and Joel McHale sort of doing his riffing. I love that too. So this was a fun one for me. It's definitely not as good as Crime Scene Kitchen. I can't wait for that to return. I want it, but I'll leave Celebrity Beef with a B+. It's a lot of fun. All right, and finally we will get to Snake in the Grass. This is on USA. And this follows 4 strangers who are dropped into the wild, and to win $100,000, they must figure out who is the saboteur among them, who is secretly undermining them every step of the way. Now, at first blush, I thought this was an ongoing series where every week we would see the same group of people for like 6 weeks or something, and I was like, well, at some point they're going to figure out who the saboteur is. But no, I was wrong. Every single episode, I guess because the prize money is so high, I don't see USA Networks giving away $100,000 too much, on TV shows. So, when I think of original game shows that aren't on like major broadcast networks, it's usually like 10 grand, maybe 25 grand, that's like the usual game show network prize. But USA, they're going out for it. They're going to give $100,000, and basically every episode somebody wins it. Basically, if the saboteur does not get found out, they get to keep the 100 grand alone. And if the other 3 can agree that, one of them is the saboteur and they're correct, then they will split 100 grand. So either way, every episode, they're giving away this money. And basically it is kind of like a lot of shows we've been seeing lately where there is, a snake in the grass, the name of the show in this case. But recently we had the cooking one where there was, I forget, that was on Netflix, I think maybe. But that was some comedian was hosting it. Was it some blonde funny lady that they do on the roast and stuff? I can't remember which one it was. It wasn't the one that does F-Boy Island. Whatever, it doesn't matter. It's a different show. But that was like, okay, there's somebody in the kitchen that's sabotaging. And of course, one of my favorite game shows of recent years is The Hustler, which has been canceled, unfortunately, by ABC. But that was, same concept, but with trivia questions. So, look, the concept itself is not new here, but they are dropped into the jungle for 36 hours, so they do have to sort of stay in Survivor-like mode. And, in fact, the first episode had a contestant who was on a season of Survivor. I haven't watched Survivor in years, so I didn't recognize her, but she was one of the people in the original 4 in the first episode. So I thought, well, that's kind of cool. Maybe people will know her. But for the most part, it's sort of just civilians that you wouldn't know that are starring in it. But yeah, I mean, as a concept, we've seen it done before. But I kind of like that every episode somebody's going to win 100 grand, and they sort of have a similar tribal council thing at the end of the episode to kind of talk about it, and then everybody gets to vote. And so in practice, it's not that different from a lot of shows like this, but it still was pretty fun to watch. So I will leave Snake in the Grass with a B. All right, well, that will do it, and we will see everybody next week. More TV news, more TV reviews, and the whole thing. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you then. Bye.